So from here, if we don't get to move this any further, right now, what's our worst case scenario if this job goes unfinished?
You know, I'll tell you, worst case is the Democrats, they just ignore precedent and they start adding other firearm types into the NFA. So we wind up with AR-15s, semi-automatic weapons, all this stuff being registered under NFA using this exact same process. Second worst case is they start jacking around with the tax stamp, right? So it's, $1,000 tax stamp, $4,800 tax stamp. You can kind of make up a number at this point. It's bad.
Well, Dave, thanks for coming on, repeat guest.
Welcome back.
When we got the emails, it was refreshing to see that you guys thought of us again, wanted to come back on, and we've got some big stuff to talk about today. How are you though?
Good. How about you guys?
Doing good, doing good. Did a little bit of Sunday gun day, shot at the range a little bit, and did some yard work, and now we're sitting down with you, ready to find out what's really going to go on in this. We are going to go to our Ask AI segment, and this week it is brought to us by our friends over at Frankfurt Arsenal.
If you are reloading, you need tools that work as hard as you do, and that's exactly what you get with Frankfurt Arsenal. Their top-of-the-line reloading equipment, including case cleaners, powder dispensers, and presses, are designed for precision and efficiency. Whether you're a competitive shooter or a weekend reloader, Frankfurt Arsenal helps you save time and get more consistent, high-performance rounds. Reload smarter. Reload with Frankfurt Arsenal, because your ammo deserves the best.
And I asked, who is Dave Matheny? It says, Dave Matheny is best known as founder and CEO of Silencer Shop, which is widely recognized as the largest distributor of firearm suppressors in the U.S. Earning a bachelor's in computer science in '98, he spent 16 years working as a software engineer for companies including Intel, VMware, and Dell. Motivated by his son's partial hearing loss, he aimed to simplify the confusing and burdensome process of obtaining a suppressor, both for himself and others. Founded in 2010, Silencer Shop emphasizes silencer ownership simplified. Thanks to Matheny's vision, the company handles much of the ATF paperwork and regulatory legwork. You're also active in industry leadership and public education around suppressor ownership rights. You formerly served on the board of the ASA, the American Suppressor Association, and continue to represent the industry as a lobbyist and educator. You live in Austin, Texas with your wife. We're not going to go into this, with your 3 kids, and you are a life member of the NRA and involved with other firearm-related groups.
Seriously, I'm not sure I could have done that well. That's awesome.
Well, I'll
Quite the resume.
That's a great bio. I'll send it over to you. You can put it on the website.
That's right. And it put that I'm a former board member of the ASA, and I still am on the board. That's the only thing that it got wrong.
Okay, well that's pretty good. I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, it was. I wasn't going to go there, but it was like, yeah, husband too, and it said your wife's name, and then it meant, and I was like, whoa, we're not going to go into. We're not gaslighting anybody on this podcast. It's just crazy to see that it. I mean, it just searches the web and reads everything it possibly can.
It's usually pretty close. Most people are pretty flattered. Apparently, it's doing a good job of using facts that it finds and structuring it in a flattering way for everybody. So
okay,
glad you enjoyed it.
So, well, man, let's have some fun. Let's get into this.
See why we're here.
Couple weeks, maybe a little over a month ago, big beautiful bill gets passed. We heard inklings of suppressors and all of the other fun stuff is going to be taken out of the NFA completely. Kind of ran its course, ups and downs, and then it turns out that, I guess according to me, nothing has really changed other than the fact that the $200 fee is now obsolete. Is that pretty much the only thing changed when it comes to gun owners and our rights?
Pretty much as of January 1st, 2026, that $200 tax will go away for silencers, SBRs, everything, other than machine guns.
Yeah.
But seriously, nothing else really changed. The process stayed the same. They're still registered. Yeah, not much changed other than the tax.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting though, because I was thinking about that, and we'll get into it later. But I don't see I don't see the incentive for the pencil pushers to read through these and get through them in a timely manner if they're no longer getting a fee for it. And I understand the ATF wasn't paid through that, but that just kind of struck me. That was one of the first things I noticed. Is like, here we go, wait times.
I will say though, that it is true. The ATF never took any money from that.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
no matter how much they
Well,
collected, they're completely dependent on grants from, or I say grants like budget
from general
restrictions from
fund, yeah.
Congress, right?
yeah.
They're still going to be requesting funds just like they ever did and processing just like they ever did.
Huh.
So, Dave, I think I not everybody follows this real closely, I guess. So I get just stepping back a little bit. I think that the goal, or what most people thought was going to be the goal of that portion of the big beautiful bill, was to completely remove suppressors, SBRs, SBSs from the NFA. Like, do you know how we got to the point of that being the discussion to all of a sudden now it's, oh well, we're just going to reduce the tax stamp we're just going to change the price of the tax stamp because that's an important, that seems like a kind of a strange precedent.
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. And you have to think we had to go for complete deregulation, right?
Mhm.
That had to be the goal for
Shoot for the
multiple
stars.
reasons.
Yeah, shoot for the
Well,
stars.
that's part of it, but I think you actually shoot for it and expect to get it, right? Expect to get complete deregulation. And what a lot of people haven't thought about is kind of the flip side of this, right? Because we've always had sitting out there, there are no new risks introduced by this bill, but we actually there have been risks sitting out there already, right? Democrats have thought about them. Democrats know how this stuff works just like we do. I say Democrats as anti-gun, that essentially summing it up like that. But there's been this potential of them coming in and saying, we want to put AR-15s into the NFA and using this exact same reconciliation process. So they can come in, add AR-15s, add semi-automatic weapons, basically do to us exactly what we were just trying to do. So we basically had two outcomes. On the one hand, we could basically say we could get silencers, other NFA items out of the NFA, which would be fantastic. And I actually that would have been the best case scenario. But by the parliamentarian saying no, she actually, in a weird way, protected us from that being done to us, right? The Democrat parliamentarian has now said you can't change the number of items in the NFA through this process. So it's not as big of a loss as people realize, and I think it gets us really close to deregulation to the point where I think we're going to have complete deregulation of silencers within Trump's term, whether it's through legislation or a lawsuit.
Yeah. Yeah, because what I think is interesting, and for all of our listeners that don't quite understand how all of these things work, basically, to summarize it real quick, just kind of run something down because a bill just got introduced recently, and we'll get into that. But typically, a bill is introduced by someone in Congress, it's drafted and submitted, and then it's reviewed. Um, Once everything seems legit, it's going to go to the House and to the Senate to be voted on. First the House, then the Senate, or vice versa. And if it makes it through one, it gets through the other. During that time, though, here's where it gets crazy because all of these politicians like to slide their own piece of a bill in, or I want to add this, this little tidbit, or I want to add something that has nothing to do with the bill. And if it all makes it through, then if everything is voted yes, then it goes basically to the president's desk and they can either veto or sign it into law. So with this one, it sounds like we went with full deregulation, tried to do our thing as it went through. People were trying to pull it out, people trying to put different, terminology and whatnot. And then at the very end, like you said, It was not removed, but it stayed intact, but the fee was waived. It almost seems to me like it was, I don't know. I grew up hearing, that I always just remember growing up listening to my parents telling me, hey, ultimatums are always a bad thing. Well, not bad, but they're usually bad for the person who says them, because it usually doesn't quite work out the way you want. It's, I need you to do this or blank. And most of the time, human nature, we're all stubborn and say, well, fine, do that. I'm not helping. So it kind of, it made me feel like we were exposing our underbelly. Like, oh gosh, we brought it up, which is great. But if we don't succeed when the next administration comes in, they're going to roll us. And it seems like that's about to happen, but I don't know. What are the risks of this? And I'll call it a half measure, especially, going in with the future administrations.
Yeah, I tell you, the biggest risk, and once again, this risk was already there, but the risk is now, let's say, the Dems get in control again, they run through this exact same process with no filibuster, and they just jack up the tax stamp. Sheesh, I think it's like $4,800, something like that, if you were to just adjust for inflation, going back to 1934. So
Yes.
that is, I think, the biggest risk we've got right now. And it's a pretty big one.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty big risk. So before we jump into all of the pricing, 'cause that's I think is an important part of all of this, and strange to me, at least my perspective, a precedent of changing the pricing of the tax. But before we jump into that, let's take a quick break and hear from our friends of the channel.
When precision matters, trust the tool that delivers. The Wheeler Pro Series 100-piece fat wrench kit brings unmatched control to your bench. With torque you can trust and 100 purpose-built bits, it's the all-in-one answer for gunsmiths, builders, and perfectionists. Whether you're mounting optics or dialing in fine details, this kit hits every mark. Clean, confident, repeatable. No guesswork, no strip screws. Just pro-level performance in your hands. Upgrade your bench with Wheeler tools. Your workspace matters, and the Tipton Best Gun Vise 360 doesn't play around. Built for serious shooters, this vise locks down rifles, shotguns, and ARs with zero movement and full control. Tool-free adjustments, rock-solid clamping, and a 360-degree rotating cradle give you access from every angle. No shortcuts, no compromises. Whether you're building, cleaning, or dialing in, this vise was made to keep up. Tipton Best Gun Vise 360. Built to hold, built to work.
So as I said, we're going to jump back into pricing, talk about the change in the fee a little bit. Personally, I hadn't heard your perspective yet, Dave, of like, hey, they set a precedent of things aren't allowed to be added and removed from the NFA yet, or in that way. And so that was curious to me. But what was scaring me, I know Mike and I talked quite a bit about it, was now there's a precedent of this fee can be changed. So the stamp is not gone. It's not gone for good, anything like that. What is the next step, I guess? What is the next step to getting this actually gone and not just a fee reduction?
So, weirdly, getting a $0 tax opened up two routes. And I think people are starting to understand at least one of them, to complete deregulation. The lawsuit we filed is basically hinging on the NFA. It was allowed by the courts to regulate these NFA items because it's a tax. And the courts have said you can't regulate an item with a tax that doesn't collect any revenue. So by changing the tax to $0, they've opened up this weird loophole where we can now sue to get silencers, SBRs, AOWs, all these things pulled, SBSs pulled out of the NFA permanently, right? Which is exactly where we want to go before the Democrats try to jack the tax stamp back up again.
And I
The
think,
other route that's been opened, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I think I had heard that before, and I'm sorry, guys, I'm an idiot. I can't quote case law or anything, but there was a ruling that the only reason that the registry could exist was because it was actually taking care of and managing that people had paid a tax, not managing the weapons. And so if there is no
Allegedly.
more,
Yep.
yeah,
Allegedly.
allegedly, yeah.
Yes,
So if there is no more tax being paid, then what's the point of the registry?
that's
I'm
right.
Okay,
I'm
all right, I'm
interested in the
tracking. All right,
yeah.
sorry.
What's his second loophole? I don't know if
Yeah.
I've heard this one yet.
Okay, so every time a bill, so this was a special process, right? This was the basically your, you know, dealing strictly with budget type matters, right? That's why this ended up not going through because of the parliamentarian. But on a normal bill, you have to, let's say you want to pass something like this, where we had a $10.4 billion offset. So to take silencers out of the NFA, they have to come up with $10.4 billion in savings or taxes somewhere else to make up for that, right?
Hmm.
After this passed with the $0 tax, there's no longer an offset. So we can actually, it's much easier now to squeeze this into another bill because you don't have to look for an offset. We can stick it into anything. And really,
Hmm.
there's a really a pretty solid hope of getting this into the National Defense Authorization Bill next year, partially because of this no offset.
Okay, yeah, because I think I guess my question would be so is do you think that the tax stamp is gone for good, or if I well try to put this. I know the tax stamp isn't gone for good as it currently sits, and that's what's kind of scary. And what I think needs to happen is exactly what you guys are doing and a lot of other people are doing,
Hmm.
and taking up cases, because I fear that since we have opened Pandora's box, I believe we have a 3-year window to get everything we possibly can out of the NFA, because I don't see it far fetched that I don't think $4,800 is going to be legit for a tax stamp. But now that they've thrown that out there in their head, $1,000 tax stamp is less than 25% of what it should be. So it's a good deal and still seems reasonable, which lots of people that don't understand it would say,
Common sense.
that's
Yeah.
a great deal. Yeah, that's a great deal. So I kind of feel like we have 3 years to get all of these things out, because if we don't, whatever is left in there is going to get raised. And there's a lot of listeners that are going to say, well, if we can get, SBRs, SBSs, AOWs, and silencers out of there, and the tax stamp does go to hypothetically $4,000, and all it really covers is machine guns, then who cares? Because I can't afford to buy one of those transferable machine guns anyway. I see that logic, but at the same time, it's still a violation of our rights. So it's just a tough thing that I think in
Hmm.
government, 3 years is not that long.
Nope.
No.
I mean, it's the equivalent, like that's reverse dog years or something. Like it's really like a month of like regular life, because it's going to take forever to get those things to be heard
Yeah.
and to be voted on and to actually go into law. Do you think there's
Yeah,
a possibility that it's going to get darker before it gets light?
I do. I'm a little more optimistic than what you're saying. And not in the results. I think the results you're saying, I am 100% think that's the direction this is going to go. Where I'm optimistic is I think we've got a little longer than 3 years. Now, I don't think we've got longer than like 8 years. I
Right.
think within the next 8 years, we're going to hit some period where what you're saying is going to happen. And it could be 3 years. I mean, we're all just guessing, but the
Yeah.
stars kind of have to align. You need the House, you need the Senate, you need them to care. And behind the scenes, even on this, when they got to the very end, there were Democrats actually arguing our case, right? To say, just let this go. Guys in my district hunt with these things. They're not assassin weapons. So I
Yeah.
think we've got a little more than 3 years.
I hope so. I just felt like, this sounds like if a new administration comes in and it is not
Yeah.
Republican, I could see in those first 120 days an executive order being signed to, whether it can hold or not, already just start making waves. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh gosh, we got to do something.
You know
Um,
what they could do with the executive orders easily. You look at the way there's no time limit on processing Form 4s. So, sheesh, they've been over a year
Yeah.
for most of the last, 5 or 6 years. So there's no reason. All they have to do is stop processing forms, right? That's what they could do with executive order. Just stop processing Form 4s, and we're just kind of dead in the water.
Yeah.
That's one reason we have got to get these things out of the NFA, tax aside, right? The NFA on its own is a problem.
Yeah, it's like it's too late to go back, but I'm surprised it hasn't been challenged as far as wait times go already, because it's pretty interesting. I mean, you know, just like I do, as an FFL, when you first applied, the ATF has 90 days to come to a determination and either give you your license or tell you to kick rocks. So that's to be a dealer, aside from being an SOT. So it's like, wow, they have to make a determination in 90 days for me to open a store. But as far as buying a suppressor, you know, the days of 15, 16, 18 months was a reality in some cases, unfortunately.
Yep, that's right.
So now we kind of touched on this a little bit, but now that the fee is gone, what are we supposed to believe or buy into that the registry is actually for? Are they just tracking these things for fun? At this,
Oh, no, I mean, I 100% believe registration is the first step to confiscation, right? So they want to know where these things are. So if it comes down to swinging by people's houses and picking up SBRs and SBSs and silencers, they know where to come get them. Machine guns. You think before they could pass the 86 machine gun ban, they had to register them, right? So it's really, this is the registry, in my opinion, is about as unconstitutional as you can get when you talk about Second Amendment.
yeah, it's something that it's always perplexed me. Like, how can they do this? And then on top of that, you know, I guess you got to pick your battles, and that's a tall one. And so it seemed up until recently, it just seemed almost impossible that you could, you know, try to chop that tree down in one fell swoop. It was, let's take a little swing here, let's take a little swing there, and let's take victories as we can. But with all the new info that came to light, it just seems like, hey, now's our chance. Let's try to do it.
That's right.
So before we get into the fallout once it happens, let's just say, you know, the ATF states that the $200 stamp doesn't support the branch. And so I did some research. It actually, the $200 tax stamp that everyone pays, it goes into a general fund. So it kind of pays for everybody's budgets, and it goes into that big pile like you were talking about earlier. We've just began, and you brought this up, but we just began, you know, starting to, I guess, have the luxury of getting things in very, very, very fast turnaround times. Do you think, or do you have any insight as once this goes into effect in 2026, the moment the tax stamp goes to $0, do you believe that they're going to stay on track with the fast approval times, or do you think it's going to allow them to get a little more lax?
When anybody sees a lever gun, they think of their grandpa's old dusty 1895 Winchester. This ain't that.
We've got the Glock switch for you.
This is huge.
Yeah, for you.
A lot of guys ask me, does size matter? And I'm sorry to say, yeah, it does. With silencers.
Every cop wants to be there to save the day, but the reality is we're not going to be there. Everybody becomes their own first responder.
I'm a competition shooter, blah-dee-dee-bah-dee-dee-yar-dee-dee-yar. What does that mean?
When I saw that, I was like, I gotta send this. What is f***ing pronouns? This is not English class. Why all of a sudden are we so concerned with grammar?
Whether you're a gun owner or just someone who's interested in how our rights are being protected, this is a development worth discussing.
Did you guys know that that's what they were trying to do? Take our and put it on Mars? I had no idea.
If Democrats want to fight for people breaking the laws, Americans are done with that bull crap.
Do you believe that they're going to stay on track with the fast approval times, or do you think it's going to allow them to get a little more lax?
You know, under the current leadership at ATF, I actually think they've got a pretty good shot aside from initially. So initially, you're going to have all the purchases made in October, November, December that are going to be submitted in like a 2 or 3 day window. I don't see any world where wait times don't go up from that. But with the
Yes.
current people running this processing, I think they'll get a handle on it pretty quick. And I think wait times are going to be still historically low. Maybe not 1 or 2 days, but I think we're still going to see a week or two, which I think is still acceptable for the market, at least until they get new leadership at ATF, right? But right now, I think we're good. I hope so.
Okay.
So doom and gloom aside, Dave, like this is still pretty good news for a lot of folks, a lot of businesses too. What do you think? What do you think the market looks like come January 1st? Come January 1st, like for both consumers and providers, builders, everybody who's in that market.
I think people don't. I mean, people probably do realize, but even a lot of people don't actually. That wait times when they dropped last year, it was almost overnight. They went from
Yeah.
9 months to a day. Silencer sales especially doubled last year, right? Because of that. I think if it weren't for all the kind of turmoil and the politics this year, we would have seen another doubling just from the wait times. Assuming wait times stay low and the $200 tax goes away, I think you're going to see this market double a couple more times. I think you're going to wind up, with a market that's at least 4x what it was before this all happened.
I agree. What do you think that's going to do? I mean, an old saying in business is, I would rather complain about being too busy than not busy enough. But with, if this goes in January, the way I think it's going to, currently tracking, I think it's going to be a pretty large speed bump for all of the manufacturers of suppressors out there, because they're already, I mean, judging on the industry, I mean, right now we are in a little bit of I would say a minor decline overall in the firearm space, but that is going to be like the injection of like that everyone needs, but it's going to be a really big problem for the manufacturers. If you're not already starting to stack up your materials, your raw materials in advance, or starting to already build up,
they're gone.
A little bit of inventory, it's those last 3 months of the year and then leading into the first quarter. It's going to be amazing. Cause I look at your site still, and even to this day, there are lots of suppressors that are out of stock, not because you don't want to carry them. It's just because you can't get them right now.
That's
I think
right.
it's going to be a supply and demand issue, and the bottleneck is going to be at the manufacturer directly.
Yeah, then that's true.
Do you hear, have you talked to any of your, cause I know you have great relationships with all of your vendors. Are you already talking to them? Are they mentioning whether they're starting to gear up for that, or, what do you think the plan's going to be going forwards for them?
I think pretty much everybody is in ramp up mode right now.
Yeah.
Whereas last year, that the wait times dropping kind of caught everybody off guard.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually, as an industry, still kind of on the back foot from that, right?
Yeah.
I think this slowdown over the last, I'm going to call it 3 months, 4 months, while this legislation's been going through, because it has been. People are kind of waiting to see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Manufacturers are starting to catch up from that. Now they're seeing how this turned out, and they've got almost 6 months to ramp, and most of them are going to take serious advantage of that.
They better. I mean,
I still don't think it's going to be enough, though. I think you get into January, I think everybody's going to be out of stock regardless.
Yeah.
It is going to be it's going to be a stock problem.
Yeah, there are cans, and I'll mention one just because my rep over there at Silencer Shop, Robert, I get the emails every week, and the direct thread Omegas from Silencer Co., those 30 cal cans, man, as popular as those are right now, Silencer Co. is hitting their stride, and they come in, they sit around for 2 or 3 days, and you wait again. So if they're already in a supply chain issue now, just like you said, everyone's going to go buy. And I would hate to do this, but do you see pre-order being a possibility for some companies? I would hate to do that because you got to know serial numbers, but how can they how do you think that the industry can, kind of navigate that problem aside from just, well, we're going to make as many as we can?
Yeah, and the knowing serial numbers is really what holds
Yeah,
everything up,
big
right? So
deal.
you can pre-order as much as you want, but until you get a serial number, you can't submit anyway. I do think we're going to go into it's going to be a lot of back orders, right? Because we always fill our back orders for, first in, first out, right? We don't play games with that stuff. So people will get in line when their serial number comes through, they'll get submitted. It's going to be a little while before that stabilizes. Once we get into next year, I don't think we're going to see a real problem though till after January.
I agree.
Maybe for Christmas, people might try to beat it by a couple of weeks, but not by much.
Well, there's some stores now that are advertising, hey, buy your suppressor now and we'll keep it in the safe and won't submit it until January. And it's like, never thought of that. You're going to have a lot of stuff in the safe because that would be crazy.
That's right.
That's a big offer.
I think the only pro though with that would be, now that you're dodging the tax stamp, it's another $200. You're kind of incentivized to try out those new brands that you've never tried out. But there are going to be still those situations where, Matt is dead set on buying a Dead Air Primal and he's ready to go up there and buy it from Silencer Shop and they're out of stock. And he's like, well, screw it. I'm just going to buy this other can that, is, same caliber, whatever, and I'll give it a shot. And then he gets it and not happy. I mean, that's going to happen, but I mean, that happens now. I just think
that's right.
There's going to be a lot more. Option A is gone, so now it's time to go to option B or C or D or E or whatever is in stock at this point.
And I tell you that I think what we're going to see out of this too is a lot of new companies, which we're seeing it already. It's like they're coming out of the woodwork, and some of them are actually addressing problems that I didn't even know were problems. But honestly, some pretty cool technology, right? I think we're going to see a leap in technology, a lot of new brands. A free market's a funny thing because it'll fill the holes.
Yeah.
And the people who can't keep up with shipping, who can't keep up with making enough, will be losing market share.
I think that's an interesting perspective as well, Dave, is the increase in new manufacturers. And I think that there already is a lot of advancements coming, but there is also the flip side of that coin is there also seems to be quite a few companies that are just kind of grabbing anything that they can, using whatever technology, scanning technology, whatever, to cut these open, look at someone else's research and development, print it out themselves or CNC out themselves and undercut other brands without even having to go overseas to do it. They just don't have the overhead of a giant shop or the overhead of the research and development that went into that can. Have you seen any of that, I guess, or do you expect that thing to continue to go on?
I'm not sure that I've seen that. Not with the 3D printed stuff. I think there's enough of a hurdle to get into 3D printing already. I think what you're describing has happened in traditional cans since I've been in this market. I mean, seriously, I think every single brand has done it. They cut each other's cans open and, what'd they do here? What'd they do there? How do we improve it? I think that's just kind of how this market has worked.
You can see it. I was going to say, you can see it now with everything that people were doing and submitting themselves with solvent traps. Like, okay, I'm just going to buy a whole bunch of baffles and I'm going to buy a blast baffle and I'm going to submit this and I'm just going to screw as many baffles on until I get the sound I like or until I get a strike. Like, then we'll take one off.
Right.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be like there was a 10 to almost 20-year run of the decade or the 2 decades of the AR. Everybody everybody had an AR-15. Everybody was making one. You had lowers starting at $30. You had 80% lowers. You had everyone got into the manufacturing business of making the AR-15. Now we are in the it's been going on for a couple years, but we're still in the infancy of this will be the decade or 2 decades of suppressors if it stays up. All the manufacturers of firearms are coming out with them. Like you said, new people are coming out of the woodwork. So it's going to be a really strong buyer's market going forwards, and they have to keep in line with each other's pricing. I mean, there's still going to be some cans that demand that high dollar just because of that brand name or because of the research and development that went in. But somewhere in the middle, everybody is in the middle of the pack pretty much, and they're all going to have to be priced accordingly or they're going to get left behind. Are you seeing any pricing shifts as far as from companies bringing out, suppressors that are a little more less expensive now that they're becoming so prominent?
You know, I think we're just starting to see kind of the development of the low end market, I'll call it, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of that is happening at new companies. New companies are popping in and they're kind of wanting to come in and be that new value brand, right? Or even in this market with no weights and no tax stamp, I think there's actually room for a cheap brand, right? Where you've got like the high point of silencers, right?
Yeah. Well, I see it on Instagram. There's a few companies that are out there turning cans
we're
that
talking to.
that they've reached out like, hey, we want to send out all these suppressors because we want you guys to try them. I don't know how many people are at his outfit. It may just be him, but this guy's turning, 50 to 100 cans a week, and he's like, hey, I'm going to be able to sell these things for $200 to $300, and it's like,
Dang.
man, part of me is like, oh yeah, give me one, give me five, give me. But the other part of me is, I want to dive in a little deeper, because if you're just circumventing someone else's engineering, even though it's made in the USA, it's still a pill you have to swallow, knowing that someone took the shortcut. I'm not discounting it and saying they are. It's just, you got to do your research when that happens, because you got to worry about the fallout and how long it's going to last. And, I'm sure they're all steel construction, which is great, but they're going to be bricks.
What you say, they're all steel. A couple of years ago, a new brand was trying to come out with a can that was made out of magnesium.
What?
And I remember thinking, that doesn't sound like the best idea. I can
Yeah.
just see this thing being a fireball in your gun, right? But they were seriously trying to push a magnesium can.
Sounds sparky.
As long as you
Yeah.
didn't flashpoint, you're fine. But if you hit that flashpoint, boy, what a show.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They probably
So-
found out how hot it had to get for it to do that. We're like, well, yeah, we can't find these anymore.
Yeah, you better label that one for bolt gun only. No,
That's
no.
right.
So let's get into it. Let's go ahead and talk more about this lawsuit and why did you guys, of course, I want to preface this by saying only speak about what you can speak about with, doing yourself an injustice there. But what, talk about why you guys felt so strongly enough to do this.
I think there are several reasons, right? And this is going to sound weird. I'm kind of a believer in karma, and I think there's kind of a quote right thing to do. I think this is the right thing to do. I think Silencer Shop, it will have to adapt. We will have to, kind of change how we do things, but I think we can. We've done that before, right? It's I think the second thing is, if you look at the market, so look at just NICS checks. So that's not total number of guns sold. That's just NICS checks, which is always going to underestimate the true market. There are roughly 2 million NICS checks every single month. In 2024, there were 750,000 silencers sold total. So the silencer market really is much, much smaller than it should be because of the way they're regulated, because of this $200 tax, because of the weight, because of the paperwork. So for us to grow this market in any meaningful way, we have got to start figuring out how to get them less regulated, right? Get them out of NFA, get rid of the tax. Getting rid of the taxes is a step in the right direction. Last year, getting the wait time down to just a couple of days, that's a step in the right direction. But we're still not all the way there, right? Because the reality is there should be, and I'm going to make up a number here. This is just made up.
Right.
For every 3 guns sold in the US, there should be 2 silencers, right? It should be some ratio like that, which means we should be selling, between 1 million and 1.5 million silencers per month.
Yeah.
It's a, I mean, this market is dramatically smaller than it should be. The third thing is really kind of comes back to the tax stamp being jacked with in this reconciliation process. You're right. We kind of opened Pandora's box getting it to zero, but the reality is if we hadn't, the Democrats would have. Right.
Right.
So it's, we were, and I also kind of agree with you. I think everybody throws out the 4,700, 4,800 number. I don't think that's realistic, but I do think the 1,000 is realistic. So I think they get that through. And who cares if it's, let's call it 800, right? Any number, even going from zeros back to 200, it would be bad, right? It would just crush the market for some period of time while it absorbed the 200 again.
Right.
So that I think there are quite a few reasons why we have got to get this stuff out of NFA. I mean, we got to get this problem solved because it is a problem.
Yeah. And I do want to commend you, and I understand that things are business moves, and I'm not going to bring up names, but it's really nice to see that you are like I said earlier. I'll go ahead and say it now. I spoke off air to you a little bit about wanting to ask this, but from my perspective, looking at like why would Silencer Shop as a business try to go after deregulating silencers? Because as I said, I see it where if you deregulate them and they're on, they're on every gas station end cap, and now Home Depot has them and Academy Sports, it seems like that could be a place that, well, Silencer Shop is no longer needed. And if it does go complete 180 degrees and we go to $4,800 tax stamps or even $1,000 tax stamps, that is going to severely cripple any company that is selling or reselling suppressors.
Mm-hmm.
So while there are other companies out there that, were trying to keep things in NFA, and I don't want to name names and be rude, and I'm sure they have it's a great business decision. I mean, I definitely see that part. I mean, as a business, you got to survive, but it's refreshing, like you said, with karma, like, hey, just doing the right thing is doing the right thing because you are a freedom loving, Second Amendment supporting human before you are a businessman in this aspect. And it's like, hey, I appreciate that. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think they can exist together though, right? I mean, I'm not throwing in the towel. We're gonna we're gonna figure out how to make this work.
It's been a lot of panic from a lot of people and like, how will the market survive? How will these companies survive? Like, oh, my company's gonna go under if this happens. And Dave just says to us, like, so we'll pivot, like, whatever.
Well,
he's not even worried. I love it. Let's
go. I find it interesting though, because I still believe I use the analogy of people that smoke cigarettes. If you smoke cigarettes in Tennessee, you still have to be 18 to buy a lighter now. So stupid, but you got to be 18 to buy a lighter, even if you're just trying to light candles, whatever. So do you see it if it's completely removed out of the NFA? What do you think that picture looks like? Do you think they're going to be, at Walgreens or whatever, or do you think it's going to turn into still like a 4473 because it's written right now, it's considered a firearm according to the NFA? Do you think you're still going to have to do a background check for it if it's completely wiped? What do you think?
Yeah, that's the direction it's going. So if they get pulled out of the NFA, either through legislation or through this lawsuit, they'll remain GCA items, and they will, you'll still have to do a 4473 and a background check, just like any other firearm. And it's funny because we're so focused. We have another lawsuit that people haven't really paid a ton of attention to, where we're suing the state of Illinois. And what we're trying to get out of that is a ruling to say that silencers are protected by the Second Amendment, right? If we can get that ruling through, that's actually also a really big deal.
Game over.
For states that don't allow them, like California, right? Illinois, New York.
That's a huge step because, I see the side of the 2A absolutists saying absolutely not. I should 2A, suppressors shouldn't be 4473, no background checks. It's my right because it's not a firearm. I get that. But at the same time, I'm not compromising. I'm just playing the other side and realizing, still being still being a supporter of the 2A, the more suppressors there are in market, the more likely they are going to show up in the news. So if they are not regulated by even a $10 background check or whatever the 4473 is in your area, if they're just readily available, you're going to have the left saying, we told you guys this is going to happen. Look at what this is. And it's just going to be pandemonium, even though it's not really a true snapshot of what a Second Amendment supporter looks like.
Right. And I will say one thing, kind of being a Second Amendment absolutist, I think there's a little bit of a wrong approach by a lot of people. I think when it comes to losing rights, we need to be 100%. This is our line in the sand. We never lose rights. Absolute. When it comes to getting rights back, man, every little win we can get should be celebrated as a victory, right? I mean, the $0 tax was not what we wanted. It's not the best deal we could have gotten, but it was a victory. And if we want these congressmen to support us in the future with future victories, man, we got to go in there. We got to high five them. Right now, I feel like the industry's kind of tearing them down for not doing enough. And the result of that is it's going to be a lot harder to get pro 2A legislation for the next 5 to 10 years because they've sort of learned their lesson, right? We're treating them poorly for delivering a win.
You don't want to bite that's feeding you like, hey, thanks for nothing, even though it wasn't what you wanted, but yeah, it was better than what we had.
Yeah, it was a win. If we're moving it, we always want to be moving it in a positive direction because that's what the anti-gun people do. They are constantly moving the ball just a little bit further. Every little win they take and they consolidate, right? And over the course of decades, we're losing real rights.
Shipping it away.
Yeah.
So, Dave, do you in your lawsuit, is it just you guys, or do you have industry support?
No, there's industry support. And our lawsuit is Gun Owners of America, Silencer Co. jumped right in, and I got to tell you, those guys are just HPA was kind of the brainchild of Silencer Co. in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. B&T is in there, Palmetto State is in there. And FRAC. So FRAC is another industry group that has done some fantastic work.
Yeah, I love FRAC. Yeah, that's awesome. At least, I mean, I know you would have been willing to go in on your own, but to have the help is always appreciated, I'm sure.
Yep, that's right.
So I guess big picture, what do you feel a win, what could a win mean nationwide for 2A loving suppressor owning people?
I think a win means these things come out of the NFA. So essentially you could walk into a gun store, buy a silencer, get a background check, walk away with it that day. And I think that will change how silencers are viewed. Right now, we buy silencers like accessories, right? It's like they're kind of like a scope or a stock or whatever else.
Right.
I think the reality is you'll start to see more and more integrals in a world where they're pulled out of NFA. Because why wouldn't they be?
Part of the
right.
system.
It's just part of the system. Built in, optimized for that gun. Sheesh, I'd love to go buy a Ruger American that had a silencer built right into it. That'd be one of the best starter guns you could possibly buy.
Super cool.
Right.
Yeah, especially for like that. The 1022s, all the great stuff that Volk Ortson's building, just those integral pistols, like, man, those things, it's like it's a no-brainer. They should be that way.
Yeah.
But unfortunately they're not. So we have to wear big bulky ear protection.
Yeah.
And we have to risk that. So that's awesome. Thank you for that.
In a country, the United States, a country known everywhere else in the world as like having loose gun laws and a bunch of dangerous criminals toting guns everywhere, and it's just everybody's got guns and guns and guns. We have the tightest restriction on suppressors. Like, if you have any sort of ability to purchase guns in European countries, you can also purchase a suppressor that same day and leave with it like an accessory. So it's
it's like buying a flashlight.
Yeah, it's kind of we've got it kind of flipped over from the rest of the world, it seems. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
If I had to choose, though, I would definitely take our route just because.
Loud and proud.
You know,
I'll keep them loud and proud if I have to.
but we are greedy people, so
Yeah.
we want them both. So you can, going against the NFA, going to try to get these removed, you can target the process, the delay, the overall legality of the regulation. Since a tax has been removed, I guess first part of the question is, what part are you guys targeting? And then part two of that is, from this point, in your opinion, what's the next step to fully remove suppressors from the NFA?
So we're targeting the tax. So it dropped to a $0 tax. You can't regulate something with a $0 tax, according to the courts. So the justification they've used to have silencers, SBRs, SBSs in the NFA, they just pulled the rug out from that argument, right? They literally don't have that argument anymore. So simultaneously, though, while we're going down this route, we're going to continue on the legislative route. Like I think I mentioned earlier, NDAA next year is going to be an opportunity to get something like a full HPA through. And then there's really another thing we're focused on. There's a whole slew of states where the law is written to where silencers are illegal, but them being registered under the NFA as a quote affirmative defense, including big states like Georgia, right? I tell you, I'm a little shocked that nobody was aware of this before. And I think that's something we're going to kind of take advantage of this time while the lawsuit's going through and while we're pushing for this legislation to fix as many of those states as possible. We actually created a foundation to focus on that issue.
Yeah, because I was going to say there are a few people. I think Colorado's one as well. Maybe it's not Colorado, but there are a few.
Yep, Colorado's one. Yep.
So, for our listeners that don't understand what we're talking about, there are some states that have regulated suppressors so that if they are not in the NFA, they are not allowed to be owned. So the NFA is some of these states only saving grace to have them. So if we deregulate, while it's a win for the majority, the minority of us have the possibility of losing that right altogether unless they move states.
And it's like 16 or 17 states. It's not a small number.
No, it's quite a few. It is definitely quite a few.
But I think it can be fixed. And I think it's easier in my personal opinion, it's easier to fix something when nothing's changing. So step into these states to do some clarifying language. We can even push it through in some of the liberal states, right, where you normally wouldn't think you can make these changes. Get them fixed, clarified, and then when we get them out of the NFA, nothing changes and they don't even realize. That's our hope.
Yeah.
I'm glad there's a lot smarter people working on this than me. That's all I'm saying. Because I don't have the tactics to accomplish something like that. But I'm really happy to hear folks on our side of the argument with enough skills and enough brains to figure it out. I'll be everybody's cheerleader. I'm the hype man.
Well, let's give you a real clickbaity one, man. So from here, if we don't get to move this any further, fallout question. Right now, what's our worst case scenario if this job goes unfinished?
I'll tell you, worst case is the Democrats, they just ignore precedent and they start adding other firearm types into the NFA. So we wind up with AR-15s, semi-automatic weapons, all this stuff being registered under NFA using this exact same process. Second worst case is they start jacking around with the tax stamp, right? So it's, $1,000 tax stamp, $4,800 tax stamp. You can kind of make up a number at this point. It's bad, right? It's weird, and this is something people don't normally think of. If you buy a firearm manufactured and sold in the U.S., the manufacturer has to be a tax called Pittman-Roberts. It's hidden because the manufacturer pays it, but it's actually a pretty significant tax.
Mm-hmm.
Silencers and SBRs are now falling into this weird category where there's a $0 tax because there's no NFA tax, but they're also not subject to Pittman-Roberts. And that kind of cracks me up.
Let's get it while the getting's good.
Keep that going.
Okay.
We're gonna
Yeah,
we're gonna quadruple the market, and you ain't paying taxes on any of it. Let's get it. Like, let's go.
you've got guys like Mike Pappas over there saying, "Damn it, Dave, be quiet. Don't tell him."
So
That's
Dave, what can the average consumer or the average little mom and pop gun dealer, what can average Joe do to help continue to push this to help everybody get these things out of the NFA?
I really think I think money helps, right? I think I would say that's the biggest thing. I think, GOA has been a driving force behind this. You know, donate money. We've got the Silencer Shop Foundation, same thing. We're super focused just on this issue, right? So and you buy from Silencer Shop, the money automatically goes into Silencer Shop Foundation, right, to get these things deregulated. So I think that's really the biggest thing most people can do aside from just talking about it, right? We need to raise awareness. Weirdly, buying silencers helps because the more, and seriously, that's going to sound totally self-serving, and I probably shouldn't even say it out loud, but the more that are out there, they need to be in common use, right?
Yes. One thing I was going to ask you, and I had it on the tip of my tongue earlier, and I completely forgot. And I'm sure you guys have thought about it, probably not as much because it's not part of your business model, but hypothetically, go back to what you said about how we believe that if everything is deregulated, it's still going to most likely go through a 4473 and all of those things. What does that do for, how do you think the home builders are going to be treated in this, as far as, all of the people that want to do the Form 1s, they want to build their own. Do you think that's still going to be something that is regulated in some sense, or is it going to be regulated similar to the way, we treat, Form 1 firearms? Hey, you got to serialize it. You got to put your, the manufacturer's name and city, state, all the same stuff. Or what do you think?
I think it's going to go the way of like 80% lowers. So I think people will be able to buy kits. ATF is going to come up with some wacky rule, I promise.
Yeah.
It won't make any sense.
Yeah.
But still, it's going to go, I can only imagine what an 80% silencer would look like. I can't even imagine what that would be. But I think that's the road we would go down, right? And I think for the true home builder, the hobbyists, it'll be 100% a heyday. And because of that, we'll see more advancement in the silencer industry. Because every now and then there's those home builders that strike gold as far as, man, I tried this and it worked, right?
Yeah, every great invention we had was some guy messing around in his garage and finally figured it out. So,
yep, 100%.
Awesome. Well, we have gotten to the point where we're just about to the end of the interview. So what I want to ask you, I mean, we already talked about what the average person can do. So is there any way that the average consumer can help you guys and your cause, or is it just same stuff, bring awareness, buy suppressors to make them common use regardless of where you're buying them from? Everything starts grassroots, start talking to your local politicians and let it trickle up.
Yeah, I think that's all right. I just be nice to the politicians, right? I think as an industry, these guys are on our side. They're good guys. Let's show them some love, right? Instead of just thrashing them all the time.
Makes sense.
So Dave, I know that for all of us to come to this conversation, you kind of came to us and we're like, first of all, thank you. I don't care if we were your first call or your 100th call or wherever we fell in the pickup line. We definitely appreciate that. But we usually lead each show with kind of an outline. But before we get to the end, I want to make sure, did you get everything out that you wanted to talk to the folks? Was there anything that we missed that you want to make sure that people know about what's going on between kind of now and January and what's going on over at Silencer Shop?
I'll tell you, we're busy, right?
Awesome.
There are a lot of changes happening right now, and we're just trying to make sure we go into next year with a smooth process. And of course, we don't completely control that. ATF controls part of it too.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they solve the the Form 4 that we've all used for so many years, which is a tax paid transfer. Do they
Yes.
keep using a Form 4 but with the $0 on it, or do they come up with a new form? Right. I mean, that's all. These are all TBD kind of questions, right? So yeah, a lot happening right now.
Well, you seem really you seem really optimistic about that, and I think out of everybody that we know in the industry, you're probably way up here on the list of guys in the know on that type of situation. So we appreciate you bringing the knowledge to us. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. Seriously.